So I want to start off by introducing yourself and telling everyone who you are, where you are in life, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So my name is Courtney Papillon. I was born and raised in Louisiana. I spent majority of my life growing up in Lafayette, Louisiana. I graduated from the University of Louisiana, majoring in organizational communications with a minor in psychology. I'm also a part of Sigma Lambda Gamma National Sorority Incorporated, where I was a part of the Alpha chapter there. Um, I am an avid community service volunteer. I love my fellow people, love helping out people. I've worked in the service industry for over 8 years. That's how I made my living. And then I moved to Iowa City, Iowa, right after graduation to gain a different perspective on life, see something different, um, stray away from Louisiana culture, and just embrace my adulthood in a different path.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's who I am.
We actually know each other from working at a restaurant in Louisiana called Rufino's in Lafayette. And we worked together for about 4 years.
Yeah.
Ish.
Just about, yeah.
Yeah. Whew, long time. And I feel like you and I just like can always have connected like on a deeper level. And this whole idea came from, I remember one time, I think I was your front weight. And I remember you being so upset. I'm like, Courtney, what's wrong? And you were like, this table just told me like, oh, well, you speak really well. And do you remember that?
Yes.
Like so pissed. And I'm like, in the moment, I'm like, damn, yeah, that's pretty messed up for them to say that, because I understood at the time, but I didn't really like fully understand that that was like everyday thing, a very often thing. I thought it was like a one time and once in a few times. And like I remember you being so upset, and I was like, damn, like people really do that?
Yeah.
And then I started thinking deeper, like, okay, well, have I ever done something like that? Have I ever, said something that I didn't realize came off racist or gaslighting? Or, I started thinking like, most certainly I have. And it just started making me kind of reevaluate my thought process and why I think the way that I do. And with all this stuff coming out, George Floyd's death, and I started being very vocal on my social media pages, and I got quite a bit of backlash from my fellow white community for it. And I knew how I felt, and I knew why I felt the way I felt, but I don't think I could ever like put it into the correct or exact words. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, and I just wanted to reach out to someone because, like I said, it's not my shoes that I to walk in. I've never been in that situation. I've never had that, and that's my white privilege. And I've never been through those scenarios. And so I really wanted to reach out and thank you for doing this, because I know it is not your duty. You don't have to be here helping us out, educating us folks. So I appreciate you being willing to talk to me about this.
Yeah.
And I've always felt really comfortable with you, and I always felt that we were kind of honest with each other. So I felt like this was like the right time and platform to start this conversation. And so I want this to be like an open dialogue. But the first thing I want to talk about is what you mentioned, was that, like, of course we understand all lives matter. Can you go like a little deeper into that meaning and why that is so freaking offensive?
Yeah. So, okay. So like I told you, I was nervous about doing this just because like we both share anxiety.
Yeah.
And just specifically right now, this has been a very nerve-wracking moment for, I'm sure, everyone, whether you're agreeing that all lives matter or Black lives matter or police brutality is justice or injustice. This is going to pull at you in some kind of way. It's going to make you uncomfortable. It's going to make you feel something. So I needed to educate myself, because, we're stuck behind our phones so much that a lot of us only see what's on social media. We only
Right.
gather from the environment or the community that is social media. And it could be polluted with whatever you want to believe, and whatever your understanding may be. So while I was doing my research, I came across this letter that was written to this law professor, um, who happened to wear a Black Lives Matter shirt during a lesson on criminal procedures. And from my understanding, this had to have been from some type of affluent law school, because the memo that this teacher received was just baffling to me.
Mm.
They basically said that the reason why it made them uncomfortable to see the professor wearing a Black Lives Matter shirt was that it stood for violence. It stood for anti-law enforcement. It stood for people who were robbers, rioting, burning down innocent buildings, or business owners'
That's
buildings.
our next part of the conversation.
Yeah,
Sorry, continue.
but I'm just gonna go through the bullet points from what I gathered, and this is just, it's taken from different articles that I've read. It's taken from different perspectives of people who are actually experiencing a backlash from having Black Lives Matter on the forefront of either their person or something that they stand for. So there's a misunderstanding of what the phrase Black Lives Matter means. The person on the receiving end interprets the phrase as Black Lives Matter more than any other lives. It's not to suggest that Black lives should be or more important than all other lives. Instead, it's just simply pointing out that Black lives are relatively undervalued in the United States and more likely to be ended by police. And the country needs to recognize that inequity to bring an end to it. So the phrase Black Lives Matter carries an implicit "to" at the end of it. It's saying that Black lives should also matter. Saying all lives matter is dismissing the very problems that the phrase is trying to draw attention to. So some people are under the impression that Black Lives Matter implicit the phrase only.
Right.
Not
And I
correct.
saw this thing on Facebook that's going around, and it was like, your house is on fire in the neighborhood, and then the fire truck comes and they're putting out the water, and then your neighbor would be like, oh, well, what about my house? And it's like, well, your house
Right.
is on fire, so what about
Right.
your house? Like,
And
and I
I've
like
seen like,
that.
oh, I'm sorry, what were you saying?
No, I like that example a lot because when you put it into something so simple, it's kind of like, well, it's still that simple. So why don't you understand?
Yeah, like I've seen skits from like a group of young adults going into a restaurant and ordering their food, and the waiter comes out and it's like, okay, this is your meal, this is your meal. They're like, oh, this is so great, this is so delicious. And the one Black guy at the table gets an empty cup turned upside down. And the guy's like, okay, but where's my ice? I asked for ice. And they're like, why are you asking for ice? He's like, I just wanted ice, just ice. And it later turns into no just ice, no tip. So the whole point of that
Yeah.
is to bring a visual awareness to the fact that, okay, everybody's enjoying their food, but this one person who also went and sat down, did everything like everybody else, did not get his just ice.
Right.
And they were like, okay, well, let's ask the server why you didn't get your just ice. And the server's remark was that, oh, you were taking a very long time to look at the menu, and there's a long history of people like you not tipping, or you were staring at my straw too long, you could pull out my straw. And he starts to like make this makeshift straw gun. Like, it's those kind of things that can bring light to the situation to also help people be aware that this is what's actually going on in the world, but it's a lot more gruesome. There's also examples of people saying, okay, so you're gonna go to a cancer marathon. Everybody's running out for cancer and showing their support. Are you gonna be the person that is saying, all diseases matter? we need a cure for every single disease right now.
Yeah.
No, there's a sensitivity to the case of what's going on. So some people, like I said, are under the impression that it's anti-racist, anti-law enforcement, which is known to incite violence in the country. The connect or the context of Black Lives Matter arose in the fact that they don't matter or they're less important. And like I said, they understand that the slogan means that only Black Lives Matter, and that's not the case. It's the focus about Black lives. It's not the exclusion of all the other lives listed.
All lives matter. We're just saying that we want to be seen. Black Lives Matter.
And that's literally it. I just posted, one of my friends shared this picture on Instagram of this family, and it's his mom, a dad, and a son. The mom is standing up with a sign that says "All Lives Matter." The dad is sitting on the ground in blackface.
Wait, I think Lena just sent me that, or did you just send me that?
I just shared it on Facebook, and I was like, I'm puzzled. Fortunately, I haven't been getting that much backlash, and I think it's because I'm not the type of person to vocally express things that's going out in society. Majority of the time, I've been busy, and right now, I feel like since you've asked me to speak on this, I wanted to be more active. But I also want to be careful in what I'm sharing, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. But I wanted to get back to what this law professor said to this student's memo. So he went through this memo and he went through and dissected it in two parts. So he would go through the premise of what she was saying and give his critique. So what she's implying and what is actually factual. So to assert that the Black Lives Matter is about violence against the police is to ignore and invert the casual reality of the movement. The movement arose as an effect of police violence. Yes, the movement is about violence and that it is about the subject of violence, but it is not about violent retaliation against the violence that it is about. So that can kind of sound confusing. It's saying that Black Lives Matter arose from the brutality of police and the disproportionate killings of Black people against white people or other races. It's a tragic fact that rage as a consequence of racial injustice sometimes gets in acts of violence, although not nearly as often as we might expect, given the long-standing cases or causes of that rage. For example, 400 years of slavery, not just broken down into an overban of slavery from segregation, Jim Crow era, women's suffrages. To this day, it's still going on. So he says we can all lament the fact that violence begets violence, but we can't even do that if we ignore the violence that has done and is doing the begetting.
So
police brutality.
Right. And so that kind of leads into, like I hear a lot of people say that, well, they see the video and they're like horrified. Like, yeah, George Floyd's death was horrific and it was wrong. And then the looting started happening, the riots, and they're like, okay, well, now you lost me. And I feel like a lot of white people are like, why do you have to go and break stuff and steal stuff to make a point? And in my mind, at first I was like, well, they tried peacefully. They tried speaking out, they tried peaceful rallies, and nothing ever happened or became of it. So it's like, what other options are there?
Right.
You see news clippings like, oh, it's Antifa and like different things. So it's hard to like digest the lootings and who's doing it, why is it happening, where is it coming from, and things like that.
And I see a lot of people along the same lines of this referring to Dr. Martin Luther King.
Oh,
and history, and how we were taught that he was peaceful.
So peaceful.
Yeah, and Malcolm X was just, all about retaliation, sticking to the man kind of thing, and throwing in Black Panthers. But the biggest thing was civil disobedience.
Mm-hmm.
Once you go from the retrospective act of how we've gotten here, from sit-ins, peacefully, not engaging in violence, not speaking, not doing anything, sitting in a place where we were not allowed. And I'm saying we because I'm a part of this community.
Yeah.
And knowing that only caused more violence, that only caused more deaths. And if you look at something to justify, if you look at something to justify riotings and looting, the Boston Tea Act party, like throwing products off a ship, burning things down. If you look at people who lose, their favorite team loses a game, they're burning the whole city. They'll burn the whole city. And, I'm sure people got arrested. I'm sure people got hurt. Yeah. But the act of that happening versus the act of this happening, not only that, there's convoluted integration with the Black Lives Matter and people who solely want to take pride in the thrill of burning something down that has nothing to do with this. So that gets disenfranchised in its own. I remember seeing videos of, people who clearly were not Black writing and spray painting graffiti Black Lives Matter on Starbucks.
Yeah, I saw this lady, I think it was in a Target, and she was in a wheelchair, and she was sitting by the exit, and any Black person that would walk out, she was stabbing them.
Oh no.
And, just the chaos that people just brought to the situation in wrongful ways.
Oh yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Out here, there's a store called Hy-Vee. It's kind of like Rouse's back home. There's the prideful Hy-Vee. Everybody loves Hy-Vee. Somebody clearly took it upon themselves to try to loot Hy-Vee. Or that was a notion that they were. Because since the protests got up here, there was the mall area, and we were in curfew for a good couple of days. We're probably still on curfew. I don't know. But people, there was a clip of people running away from the scene. You probably saw maybe 2 Black people in the whole mix, smiling. People were smiling, running away. They're taking this moment and turning it into something else.
Right.
Or, there's also people what this happened to you? You should be mad. You should go do this. You should go burn us down. So now you have buildings being boarded up. People are on edge. I remember I went to the grocery store and there was just tension, a lot of tension.
Yeah.
Because you never know what could happen.
Right.
You don't know how somebody's going to react to you just for being Black.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a video of people starting a fire in the middle of an area where people were protesting. This one Black man was like, look, this is our city. You're coming here. You don't even live here. Do not destroy our home. Go back and destroy your home. And people are walking up, none of them Black, adding stuff to the fire. And that's kind of what is going on with this movement. It's being tainted in so many different ways by people who do not support the movement. So whenever you understand and look at the movement, you're going to only think of that. Today, I saw someone reposted a meme. He was a business owner, and it said BLM, but it was not Black Lives Matter. It was burning, looting, murdering. So that is what the legacy of this movement is starting to form into, by people who only want to support it as such, who don't want to understand what the actual meaning is. It's what it's about,
Right. And I feel like as a white person, I often try to put myself in a Black person's shoes and how I would feel. And I know my anger, and I know, I want to be like, well, I'm just gonna blow this shit down because this is bullshit. This is not right. This is wrong. But it's hard for a white person to really think about what you would do in those instances. And I hear people say, oh, that's so wrong. That's so, but which I don't know. I think some of y'all would be robbing Target, okay? Like,
Right.
I don't know.
Especially if the opportunity presents itself, because you see people, you just bust open a window and now you got a flood of people just go and doing
Right.
whatever they want to do.
Or like with the whole coronavirus thing and all the white people were at the White House gates with guns and they were like, we want to get a haircut. Y'all are a haircut. Imagine how mad y'all would be if your people were being silenced and killed.
Yeah.
So
it's hard for people to step outside of their comfort zone or to put themselves in another person's shoes, because why would they? Why would you want to step off of where you may be on a pedestal?
right.
And you may be protected. Why would you want to tiptoe in an area that is not as nice as the way, your life may be?
Right. And so that
it reminds me of, what were you saying?
Oh, so that's what's going to bring me into our conversation about white privilege.
Yeah. Oh.
So, what you just said, like that's almost like the definition of white privilege. And I think it's hard as a white person. It was hard for me to like sit here and think about, all the things that I get to do in life or that I don't have to experience on the daily because of the color of my skin. And like you said, I've never had to think about it because it's never happened to me. And like the example that I said, that lady while we're waiting tables said, oh, well, you speak so well. Why did she feel the need to say that? Because you were Black.
I've also been told whenever I worked at FedEx, and I met tons of different people. This man literally told me, he stopped me, and he told me, he's like, you speak so well. I was like, oh, thank you. Like, I'm used to hearing that. A lot of times people are taken back because my voice doesn't fit my body or the way I live doesn't just fit. But he was like, you must watch a lot of TV to learn how to speak that well. And I was just flabbergasted. He's like, are you from up north? Like, no, sir. He said, you must be from Wyoming. You sound like just like my friend from Wyoming. Like, I'm from here, sir.
Yeah.
And he was just puzzled. Like, he literally looked at me like, this can't be. I would get bullied a lot of the times because of the way I speak, of how I sound. And it got to the point to where people would call me an Oreo. And in order for me not to ruffle anyone's feather, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, I'm an Oreo. Black on the outside, white on the inside. But as I got older and I started to understand myself and how that was a microaggression in itself and just not right to say, it makes you realize that we are all not dealt the same cards.
Yeah.
And just because I sound proper doesn't mean that I'm acting white. Just because I may speak a little bit differently than the next Black person that you may see doesn't mean that I'm any less Black than them.
Right. And it's almost as if they're saying like, oh, you're up to our standard. You're up to white person's standard by speaking that way.
Just to like kind of stay on the track of privilege, you had asked me like, how do people understand the fact that, okay, I've worked hard for what I have?
Yeah.
How can I still have white privilege?
Right.
And I remember, I don't know if you took Dr. Winter's class in communication. She had us read an article about 4 white people still having white privilege. And it was about this person who grew up in some very unfair conditions that even things that I'd never experienced. And still, they understood how they could be privileged. And it was just by the color of their skin. So it's impossible to deny that being born with white skin in America affords people certain unearned privileges in life that people of another skin color simply are not afforded. For example, I can turn on my TV or open the front page of the paper and see people of my face or people of my race widely represented. When I'm told about our national heritage or about civilization, I'm shown that people of my color made it what it is. So that's another form of white privilege. It's not necessarily of having a lot of money. not necessarily of coming from anything. It can simply be boiled down to, you could walk outside and not get shot.
Right. Or you can walk in Walmart and, not have to be stared at, or like even interracial couples, or
Oh yeah.
even like I listened to this little podcast about like different microaggressions, and it was like, well, actually this is not even micro, this is a big one. Like when you're applying for a job, and if your name is Jamal and your name is Jake, the same exact criteria, same education, but your name is Jamal, and that gets racially profiled right off the bat. So Jake is automatically privileged to not have that happen to him. And I feel like it goes in, so it's everywhere, and it's often.
And that goes into understanding racism. Right. How it's there, yes, there is internalized racism where we as a person can just solely believe that our abilities, our being is not enough. We are less than. And it manifests in a lack of self-esteem and devaluing our self-worth. But that's not how we started. There's other things into effect that cause us to realize that we carry this burden, we carry this weight of being told that we are not good enough, that we're stupid, that we will never succeed, or that we're uneducated in the sense that we can't carry a simple conversation with someone who is affluent or who may be affluent. And that stems towards institutionalized racism. Like you were saying, Jamal versus Jake. And that's a structural element of racism that falls in place with law, institutional customs, like housing segregation, school inequality, the history of Jim Crow. All these things are set in place, even though it may not be visible of white versus black, they're getting treated badly or worse than the other person. We still have to go apply for jobs. We still have to find an apartment. We still have to apply for schooling. A lot of those places that we look for or areas to evolve ourselves, there's always going to be a closed door.
Right. You have extra to get over.
Yeah. And that's where a lot of us understand, especially as women, we have to try either 3 or 4 times harder than the next person just to be seen or heard or taken seriously. And then there's also personally mediated racism. And that's the prejudice and discrimination experienced in daily encounters. So racial slurs, microaggressions, and that can be thrown out by our teachers, by doctors and clinicians, store owners. A store owner or a store worker who made that 911 call, and there you go, George Floyd is dead. Right. Or a doctor, and then you see Black women having a harder time at giving childbirth and dying. Or the Tuskegee experiments where, okay, you tell Black people, we're going to give you free Medicaid or free medical care. Just line up, and guess what? You got syphilis now.
Yeah, and we're not going to help you.
Yeah. It's generations of generations. It's not just we woke up one day and thinking the whole world is against us. Right. And a lot of us are raised to not press buttons, to not incite arguments, to not burn down buildings, to not do graffiti, to not be what quote unquote thugs may be. And that goes into a very deeper issue of politics and media and a never ending story of what people want Black people to be in order to continue the oppression. Yes, white supremacy in itself.
Also, I feel like your explanation just perfectly kind of explained why, white people are like, oh, well, slavery ended 300 years ago. Why are they still whatever? Okay, yeah, slavery may have ended 3 years ago, but racism is still alive and well today, and they're still hurting from those situations. Haven't gone away.
It's a machine that just it can't be beat right now. Yeah. Unless there are small victories. And one of the small victories that people are trying to do is defund the police. Mm-hmm. But aside from that, it's very prevalent to know that just because slavery may have ended, 5 people have just been lynched.
On a tree by a noose.
And the departments are ruling it as a suicide.
Yeah.
Like that just, wow,
Yeah.
you know? So you see that on the news, you see nothing being done about it. You're seeing people in urban areas where a majority of the population is African American. They have little to no means to make ends meet because of poverty. They're over policed, and the statistics in that area are wrongly skewed to create fear. Because yes, there's gangs, there's drugs, there's all these things.
Yeah.
Because of poverty, because of lack of resources.
Because black on black crime gets brought up a lot. You know,
Yeah.
What are they doing to end black on black crime? Like, why are we mad at the white man killed the black person? Because black people are killing black people every day.
Yeah. So I came across this article from Harvard Education, and it really broke down black on black crime. And I kind of want to just take this time to go through what I learned.
Yeah, because I can post it on the podcast and let people go and read it for themselves.
Absolutely. And if any of this like resonates with you and you're like, I want to learn more, just let me know, because I can send you all the articles I learned, and I can also forward you over the Instagram pages I found that are really helpful in spreading awareness.
Yeah,
like Mackenzie.
One real quick before I forget, check your privilege. It's CHK, your privilege. That has been like the most helpful education resources that I've found so far on Instagram, but definitely send me other ones that you found. Yeah, I'll definitely hit you up for that.
Mackenzie, who we used to work with, has a whole thing going on her page. Yes,
she would.
You already know.
Yeah.
You already know she about it. And there's another guy that I follow. He also has a bit document that connects to Google Docs that has a running list of resources, books, videos, everything. So the resources are out there and they're very tangible. Right. It just takes the energy to be open to learning and reading. But in regards to black on black crime, because I know this is one of the biggest aspects of Black Lives Matter movement that is really pissing people off.
Yeah.
And another reason why it's kind of like a scapegoat as to why this movement shouldn't be taken seriously. So I'm just going to read a little bit. So it says, when an opponent of Black Lives Matter talks about blacks killing blacks, it's almost always to deflect attention away from police brutality, as if one issue makes the other more acceptable. Unfortunately, due to a long history of exclusion from important economic and social opportunities, residents of disadvantaged urban neighborhoods are primarily minorities and often Black. Research has long documented the most violence occurs within racial groups, and that Black Americans, often victimized by Black offenders, experience disproportionately high levels of violent crime. The term Black on Black violence, while statistically correct, is a simplistic and emotionally charged definition of urban violence that can be problematic when used by political commentators, politicians, and police executives. Black on Black homicide is not patterned, lends itself to an interpretation that any citizen could spontaneously be the victim of a horrendous crime at any place or any time, which happens with white fear of Black people just walking around a neighborhood. The promotion of this misunderstanding may result in heightened fear of violence among Black residents and visitors to majority Black neighborhoods. Increased fear of violence may undermine the full participation of Black residents in the neighborhood life and lead to weakened community control over local youth and public spaces. So before I keep reading, I'll just go ahead and try to sum up what I can, because it's just a lot of nitty-gritty detail.
And I'll post it. Once you send it to me, I can definitely post it.
Yeah.
Look further.
So what this article goes into talk about is how a lot of young men are lost to gangs. They're lost to drugs, and they're lost to guns. And a lot of it stemmed from older generations when crack cocaine was introduced and the war on drugs.
13th
And the war on drugs.
good Netflix documentary to watch to further explain that too.
Oh goodness, yeah. 13th really opened my eyes up for me too when it went into how war on drugs, criminals, thugs, what was all deviated from politics in order to widen the economic gap for Black people versus white people and keep people into poverty. So what this article is proposing is that collective efficacy is when minority groups come together as a community and they take care of their youth. So having YMCA or after school programs or collect neighborhood areas where you stop the school to prison pipeline. You stop them going into gangs at a young age by education, by being there for them. Big brother, big sister.
Yeah.
But it requires volunteers. It requires people to understand that you reach one, you teach one.
Mm-hmm.
Black on black crime is pretty much almost the same as white on white violence, but you never hear it.
So yeah, that was my thought a while back. I was like, well, you know how many like serial killers are white? How many people shooting up schools are white? Like, and that's white on white crime. So why isn't that an issue?
Like black on black crime is such a big thing. It's taken over the world. They're ruining their communities. It's because of how statistics is formed and is skewed. It's usually a small number of the same criminal investigations or the same criminal acts that are disproportionate to the white population. So seldom are crimes involving whites described as white on white crimes or white on white violence. And the use of the vernacular, the reason why is because it's a way to victimize other blacks as violent. Like that's their only morale is to be violent.
Because a black person is often portrayed as a threat.
Exactly. It's also a way to victimize the potential to devalue black life. So it's also deterring from the fact that there are harmful social conditions, concentrated neighborhood disadvantage, and like I said, low collective efficacy. There's no volunteers to help reach one, teach one.
Right.
It's just, it all stems from a bigger picture. But I think you have pointed out that a lot of crimes are related to races that are similar to each other. So black people are only gonna go attack other
that's
black
the neighborhood you live in. I live in a probably, I'm not sure, but predominantly white neighborhood. If someone gets over here, they're probably gonna be white.
Yeah.
So
you're not gonna see a black person really going to rummage up some mansion. That brings me. Have you seen Ring Bling?
I have not. Wait, is that the teenagers that broke into like maybe like Orlando or something? Who was it?
Yeah, it was Orlando Bloom, Paris Hilton, and some other celebrities.
Yeah.
I
watched it, but I've heard about it.
Oh my goodness, my jaw dropped when I watched this movie because all I could think about, and a lot of times in life, all I could think about is if that person was black, if these kids were black, they would not have even left the property alive at that.
Right.
The minimum sentence or the maximum sentence for one of these people was 1 year.
And they
1 year.
Millions of
They're
stuff.
still alive.
Yeah.
They're still fine. They're still fine. They changed their life. They're converted. They're great citizens of the world again. But what?
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry. That would not fly for anyone my color. Nor would we even have the brains or balls to go out and be like, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to rob Paris Hilton.
Yeah. No. Right.
And I say brains. I'm not saying this in the sense that these people are not educated enough to do it, because trust me, you probably find a black hacker who can decode a whole prison system.
Yeah.
But knowing the risk that it takes to put yourself in danger and your family in danger is something that a lot of us do not do on instinct.
Because you know what could happen and what often
Yes.
happens. I mean, a lot of my
Yeah.
podcasts that I'm talking about, I hate saying like, I know for a fact that if they were white, this wouldn't happen, because you can't know that. But like, you just know, like, if this person was white, they would not be sitting in solitary confinement for 2 years for a crime they didn't
Right.
commit. So it's,
Yeah.
especially in the justice system, you see it so much. And like, that's another reason why I started my podcast, because a lot of these cases, like, I had never heard of, and I didn't know how badly an injustice our justice system was against people of color.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what started this whole thing for me. And I'm really trying to educate myself more on the justice system and things like that. And I think that, it starts somewhere too in the justice system. Like, that's where the police and, so I feel like, I don't know, somehow fixing that would be very beneficial and trickle off to other areas. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And that's what it takes in these moments, because look, Rome wasn't built in one night. Slavery and injustices are not going to dismantle in one day.
No,
The
right.
civil rights movement literally was over 300 days in different cases. Not just one time, 300 days. Right. So what it takes is learning, being open, talking, having these uncomfortable conversations. Like, I watched this little video of this young girl calling out her parents and just hearing the ignorance and how they sound whenever they talk about Black lives,
Right.
and the ghetto, and why they don't matter, and how these people don't care about their own lives. And she's like, no, she busts out the statistics. I've been seeing a lot of numbers floating around. But what people should not forget is that those numbers are lives. There were heartbeats, they were brothers, they were sisters.
I love that. Yeah.
Friends, family, your best friend, somebody you knew.
Yeah.
It's a real dire situation here.
Right.
And one of the ways that people are trying to round themselves up to support is the defunding the police movement.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of fear in the connotation, the same way there's a lot of fear in the connotation of Black Lives Matter, how it's exclusive of whites or superior, being superior to whites.
Right.
That's not the case.
I think a lot of people, when they hear defunding the police, they automatically go into panic mode and they're like, okay, this means that we're going to have no police at all.
Right.
And so can you kind of like further explain like what defunding the police actually means?
Yeah. So what I've gathered is that defunding the police means reallocating money from police budgets to lower served or underserved areas within a community. And a lot of times this would be seen as youth centers or medical help or therapeutic help, counseling areas, schools.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a video that the budget is so large for police that sometimes schools only get 55 cents out of the entire city budget. So a better solution that people are looking for is to defund the police, but it does not mean to abolish police like it means to abolish slavery, which that still didn't happen. But it just simply means cutting police forces from an astronomical budget. And this can only happen on a city level. It's not going to happen statewide. And this has never been done before. But there are places that are trying to propose a solution. Like,
I think I saw Seattle is trying, or what I saw about them.
There's 2 places. Yeah, I know for sure. Oregon.
Okay.
It's the right care, where, hold on, let me read what it is, because I don't want to mess it up. So the right care is, I'm pretty sure this is the one where they take a police officer, a paramedic, and a social worker in every car responding to mental health crisis in the city. Um, and it's an attempt to help people get the help that they need without an arrest or violent confrontation.
Right,
There's
like
also another,
Alice, who was having a schizophrenic episode.
yes, yes. And there's also another one called Cahoots. And that's a nonprofit that received about $3 million to become a mobile crisis intervention program. And that's the one that's in Oregon, I'm sorry. They handle mental health calls as well. And that ended up reducing the percent of 911 calls by 20%.
Mm-hmm.
And they responded to more than 24,000 calls that year.
Wow.
So the reason why this could possibly be super helpful, it's because about 10% of law enforcement agencies, their budget was spent on responding and transporting people with mental illnesses. And that was like in 2017. The average distance to transport an individual with mental illness to a medical facility was 5 times further than the distance to transport them to jail. So that's why you may see somebody get in a cop car and never come back.
Right.
It's easier to just take care of it, leave them on the street, kill them, do what you may.
Right.
There was also a survey that shows that 21% of total law enforcement staff, they spent most of their time responding to and transporting people with mental illnesses. And one of the biggest things that I found that was jaw-dropping to me is that out of the survey, a total of 5,424,212 miles was transporting individuals with serious mental illnesses in 2017. And that's the equivalent of driving around the Earth's equator more than 217 times.
Wow.
Yeah. Also, the reason why people are going for defunding the police is because America's policing budget has almost been tripled by since 1977 to $115 billion.
And it's like, what are we doing? Training them like, is the military? Like, is it?
That's exactly. We're militarizing the police. It's combat training. It's fear-based training. It's proactive policing, which basically you take a police force, you put them in an area where there's anticipated crime,
Yeah.
and bring a heavy police
And that's
presence.
with Khalif Browder.
Exactly.
That'll be my next podcast, and that is probably like the most heartbreaking story that I've ever heard. And it was all from that policing.
It's one of the sad things is that you are doing such a great job at shedding light on people I've never heard of, or maybe it's just a name that got lost in the many of names.
Yeah.
Their lives, and there's a story behind each and every one of them, and I almost feel guilty for not even knowing who this person is because there's been so many people,
which is sad
who I feel like I should know.
Right. But which is sad in itself because there are so many people, there's so many lives that it's like, it's sad that it's hard to keep up with lives that are lost. But that'll be my next podcast. I'll send it to you. That is just that one. They have a Netflix documentary called Time, the Khalif Browder story. I would make sure you're in the right mind frame to watch it because I bawl my eyes out the entire, like I'm about to tear up right now thinking about it. Like I don't know how I'm going to film this podcast, but it's horrible. It's horrible.
I have to get in the right mindset to even research half of this because while I was researching any of this, just the stories.
It's heavy.
With the stories come pictures. With the pictures comes videos.
Yeah.
With the videos comes trauma.
Yeah.
And it's heavy. It's so heavy.
I feel like that's why a lot of white people don't want to even start educating themselves because it is heavy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I mentioned earlier, my anxiety since like going through this journey has been so high. Mm-hmm. Like my anxiety versus what this education means is so much more, like, you know, the education outweighs my anxiety and my feelings because I feel like it's such an important time in history. And it's like, you can't just, I would be doing a disjustice to myself by not learning and not educating myself and doing my tiny little part in trying to push the information out there and help.
I,
It's
I
heavy.
remember coming
Like, why
across
would you want to go
something.
and do that to yourself, you know? But
Yeah,
I think we have
I
to.
remember coming across something of where people are like, I have mental illness and I want to help, but I don't think I have the energy to do it. And it's not coming from white people. I mean, it's not coming from black people. It's coming from white people who are saying this. And someone's response was, black people don't have the choice to even say that I have mental illness. I can't deal with this.
Yeah, today I just can't deal with it because I'm too tired and I don't have to take this all in. But it's life.
It's a minor inconvenience, but it's exactly, it's life. It is life. Did you know that if African Americans and Hispanics were incarcerated at the same rate as white people, prisons and jail populations would decline by almost 40%?
Wow. No, did not know that.
Yep.
That's interesting.
Also, African Americans constituted 2.3 million, or 34% of the total 6.8 million correctional population.
Yeah.
They're also incarcerated at more than 5 times the rate of white people.
Oh yeah, and their punishments are 10 times harsher.
Oh yeah.
You know, if a white person gets picked up with some weed and a black person gets picked up with some weed, the black person's doing life.
And that was the whole thing with the crack cocaine epidemic. Yeah. You know, one was a powder, one wasn't.
Right.
One had a longer jail sentence.
Yeah.
And then you look at the little guy that went to the church, prayed with them, and then killed them. How he was given
Burger King.
Round to Burger King. Just chilling, not a scratch on him, just prim and proper as he could be. And then you have someone who has a busted tail light, or forgot to put their signal light on, or didn't do a full stop at a stop sign, or they walked through a cut-through area in a neighborhood.
Yeah, I was listening to Sophia Bush's, she's a great advocator. Sophia Bush, she's a great advocate for Black Lives Matter. And she was having a live on Instagram with a woman, I forgot her name, but she was involved in the incident where, I think it was in 2017, where these two black guys walk into a Starbucks and they ask to use the restroom. And the lady's like, no, you have to buy something. And so they just went sit down. 2 seconds later, the cops pull up. She called the cops on them and said that she felt like her life was in danger. And this woman stood up and was like, oh, hell no. This is not what happened. Like, this is not what's going down. And funny thing is, like, after like a few minutes, a white guy walks in and he was actually going to meet the two black guys. The two black guys were just sitting there waiting for their white friend. Yep. And he got the cops called on him.
Yep.
It's just
I saw a video. Yeah, but yeah. I think this is the same case that brought along Starbucks racial bias training.
Possibly.
I think that's the same incident. If I may be mistaken, but it's funny how they turned around and was like, "No, you cannot be seen wearing Black Lives Matter," and then realized, "Oh wait, you can wear it."
Yeah, actually.
Yeah, there was a video.
It's that add up that it's like, it frustrates me, and it's like, how can you not see?
Yeah, no. A lot of people, and having this conversation is not for the meek. It's really not.
No.
It takes setting aside your pride. It takes setting aside whatever privilege you may have, black or white, your elitism, your money.
And I think that's another thing about white privilege is like being ashamed or too prideful to admit to your white privilege. Not only that, but being racist. Like, I'm ashamed of it, but I'm not scared to admit that, I've said racist things before. I've done racist things. I've thought racist things, and that's okay you're supposed to sit there and realize that and
checking your bias.
Right.
checking where
Checking
you
yourself.
realized that my thoughts were different.
Right.
My thoughts may have been harmful. And it's
Right.
okay. Look, I'm not saying like racism is okay,
No.
but it's okay to understand that there's a progress happening.
Yeah.
That it's
And
every single day you're
right.
gonna have to realize that
In that.
what you see, what you feel is a discourse.
Right. And that's work.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think people want to admit it, or maybe they're ashamed of it, or maybe they don't even realize it. But I think by having this conversation and, giving examples and listing statistics and showing that this happens every single day, hopefully people will start realizing that, oh yeah, you know what? I have some things I need to work on, and I want to start contributing to the Black Lives Matter movement, or I want to start learning. I want to educate myself. I want to know more, and I want to
Yeah.
put that energy into something good.
I'm gonna send you the articles that I found and the resources that I found that would be helpful for someone who is trying to step outside their comfort zone. One of them is a 21 habit forming activity set where you check your bias.
Wow.
So it's broken up into videos, it's broken up into books, it's broken into activities to where you can actually step outside your comfort zone and check yourself.
Right.
There's also
all those, that way people listening,
yeah,
go and that way they have those resources to go look at those things.
absolutely. Oh, trust me, I'm gonna hook you
On
up.
board me.
I will. I found so many, and it's terrible because like majority of the time that I spent researching, and I realized how many numbers were in front of me, and I was like, this is just not gonna catch anyone. You know, numbers can go in and out your ears, just as it is. Just like 32, okay, but that's 32 people,
Right.
or 32% of how many. You know, it's hard to really put a face to a digit.
Right.
Still feel empathetic.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's about taking the first step.
Yeah.
It's about questioning yourself and questioning those around you in a way that you see that in a way that can promote an evolution of thought, an evolution of being.
Yeah.
You know, we're all here for a reason.
Right.
And I don't think the reason that we should be here is to kill one another or be biased to one another. We all have our different starting points. You know, some of us start out rich, some of us start out poor, some of us get to the same level playing, some of us don't.
Mm-hmm.
We all have a different paths to walk.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you know, it's the human race.
And my scales are like, I just want justice, and I want everyone to love each other, and I want everything to be peaceful, and I want it now. My millennial brain is like, I want peace now, I want it now, I want that gratification, I want, and that's another thing that I'm working on, is slowly realizing like this is not an overnight thing. Like this has been going on for years. Now we've come far, but not far enough. And it's like how
a lot of progress has been made with these past protests alone.
Right.
Like I don't have the list in front of me, but the list is pretty long.
Right.
It really is. And going back to, you know, the instant gratification of making it now that we want justice, this movement is not a moment. It's a movement. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Same way with life. And undoing a system of injustice and learning a system of injustice and racial bias and prejudicial systems, it's not easy. It takes effort. It takes accomplices. A lot of these things are laws, and we know how long or how short it takes for a law to be passed, depending on what's in favor. You know, a lot of people may not get to see the progress that they want to see right now because it takes more than just one person to bridge the gap.
Right.
It takes a real full comprehension of what is going on here, to understand that Black Lives Matter does not mean that the people who support this movement hates white people, or hate Trump supporters, or hates whoever it is that they feel may be targeted. Everybody has their own reason for supporting something.
Right. We'll have to have a part 2 on politics, Courtney.
Oh yeah.
That's a whole nother 3-hour conversation.
Oh yeah. I already know. Working back in Rufino's, we would literally have to like pause our conversations because we would get too deep into it.
Yeah. No, I know. And you know, I said that because I heard you say the Trump thing. You know, just because the Black Lives Movement is going on doesn't mean they hate Trump, and just because vice versa they hate Biden. You know, it is a politics thing, but it's starting with a race thing, and that's what I think that we're working on first. Yeah.
And Black people are not monolithic, so you may have one angry person, you may have one neutral person, there's an extreme line to everything. Just how it is with anything in life.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like you said, this is a bigger picture of racism. And it's hard not to tie in all those things and get into dip and dab into politics or Confederacy or all those other things. You know, all those are trigger words because they all hold a piece of the pie to the bigger picture.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I appreciate you so much. You have no idea.
Thank you. I hope this was helpful.
Good.
I don't know.
I wasn't nervous at all. I was like, I know that we're going to have a productive conversation. We're going to get a lot out of it. We're going to get a lot of education out of it. And I think we did a good job.
Thank you.
So we'll definitely have to have a part 2 because I have a feeling that, you know, people will have a lot to say about this. Hopefully not harsh things. I think that you and I are both taking a risk by doing this, but
yeah, you know, if it is harsh, it's in their mind that they understand life a certain way, and that's their truth. My truth is completely different. You know, so some people, you can't really change their mind overnight or by second or by listening. It takes work and it takes effort on their part. It's all intrinsic work. It really is.
Okay. Well, send me all the information. I'll link it in the resources so that everyone can go look at it for themselves. And I love you. And
I love you.
So
I'm so proud of you.
I miss you. I hope all is well.
I hope all is well too. Oh, I wish I could hug you. Damn COVID. Ugh. Well, I'll send you the resources and text me, call me anytime you need.
Okay, love you.
I love you too. Have a good day.
You too.